Donald Trump has been canceling interviews left and right in the waning days of his campaign, but still found time to appear on a conservative podcast that was released earlier today, where he blamed Ukraine's president for his country getting invaded by Russia.
I think Zelensky is one of the greatest salesmen I've ever seen. Every time he comes in, we give him $100 billion. Who else got that kind of money in history? There's never been. Mm. And that doesn't mean I don't want to help him, because I feel very badly for those people. But he should never have let that war start. That war's a loser.
Michelle Goldberg is an opinion columnist at the New York Times. Her latest column is titled "America's on the Brink of a Great Political Realignment." It's already visible in Arizona. Faiz Shakir served as the campaign manager for the 2020 Bernie Sanders campaign. He's now the co-founder and executive director of More Perfect Union, and they join me now. First of all, I'm just going to start with like a sort of somewhat superficial, but to me, legitimate thing. He sounds really weird, Donald Trump. He's got this Brando and Apocalypse Now thing going on with his voice. At all his things, the trains of thought have gotten shorter and shorter and shorter. They've gotten more digressive, and he's doing a lot of media, mostly with very friendly outlets like that podcast. But when you look at the answers, it is just nonsense.
Right. It's unintelligible.
It is unintelligible.
If you printed it in the newspaper just kind of verbatim, it would look like it was a random word generator. And I still think that the collective, we are underreacting to that bizarro kind of musical event that he did the other night. I mean, if Joe Biden had done anything remotely similar, if he'd done it for 5 minutes, never mind 40 minutes, swaying on a stage while playing music and saying nothing while everybody sort of pretended it was normal and looked around awkwardly and tried to figure out how to respond, the calls for Joe Biden to get out of the race, the calls for anyone else to get out of the race. I mean, our ability to understand or talk about what's normal is so out of whack. And obviously, Trump being senescent is pretty far down the list of kind of reasons why he shouldn't be president.
Right, exactly.
Yes. Nevertheless, there is something going on here.
Yes, I joked the other day, it's a little like the food is terrible and the portions are too small.
Right, I mean,
it's like,
the best
do you really want him at his
is
best?
one who kind of can't accomplish anything.
Faiz, it's interesting to me. So there's always a sort of choice with Trump on what you're hitting him on. And it's interesting to me, two things. One, that they have been really going on the democracy stuff. Milley, the threats he's been making, January 6th, hammering that. At the same time, when you're looking at their ad spend, the ads they're running are very meat and potatoes. He's for billionaires. He's going to give billionaires a tax cut. We're going to look out for middle-class folks. And it seems to me like they're kind of covering both those lanes in different ways. What do you think?
I think you're right about the ad strategy. I want to see more of it as an appeal to working class people. I feel like when you look at the events that they have done, and they stand with Liz Cheney and Dick Cheney, and then you've got Mark Cuban today, and you've got efforts to speak to crypto, and you've got efforts to distance from Lena Khan. I'm like, that's all. I understand we got a big tent. We got to appeal to everybody. But don't forget, here's Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, AOC, working class people, Sean Fain. I think she's going to do an event with him tomorrow, I think, knock on wood. But I think don't lose that. We work best, right? Biden 2020 worked best when it's all of the above coalition. I think in a recent column, Michelle reminded us of the old quote of 2016, in which Democratic leaders were saying, hey, for every working class vote we lose out in Western PA, we'll gain 2 in suburban Philadelphia. That was wrong. And why is it wrong? Because when you're leaking from the working class bucket, that's a big bucket, Chris. You don't want to leak from that bucket. You want to fight for that bucket.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about this realignment, which is look, everyone's swimming upstream of the realignment, okay? So the realignment's happening. And the Biden administration has done a ton to try to, and by realignment, I mean, non-college voters moving towards Republican MAGA-ism across racial and demographic lines, college-educated voters, women voters, particularly single women, particularly women with degrees and advanced degrees moving towards Democrats. The question of what do you do with that gravity, right? How do you, is the big question for both campaigns.
Right, you go to war with the coalition you have, not the coalition that you want.
Right.
And so I think that, Joe Biden had a theory of the case, which is that Democrats have been bleeding working class support because of their economic policies, because of NAFTA, because of free trade, because of offshoring, all these things. And he is going to start kind of making the investments that a pro-worker Democratic Party needs to make, having the industrial policy that a pro-worker Democratic Party needs to make. And those things I think are correct, regardless of the political benefits, but the political benefits have been scant.
Yeah.
You know, and it could just be that it takes a much longer time to rebuild that kind of trust. But Kamala Harris doesn't have a much longer time, right? And so there really are a lot of there weren't enough disaffected Republicans to save Hillary Clinton in 2016, but there are a significant block of them out there. They're the reason that Arizona is now a state completely dominated by Democrats when it used to be a state completely dominated by Republicans, and where Democrats are still the third smallest party in the state.
Do you think, Faz, a question about Trump, how much Trump is doing media and how much he's talking to media? There are different views on this, which is that one school is more attention to him, the better for him, because that's the thing that he feeds off of. The other is that the more attention to him, the worse for him, because people actually, when he's in their face, don't like him that much. He is doing a lot of sort of friendly media. He's canceled a whole bunch of interviews. Where are you on that, particularly down the stretch here, because this is the key point?
I mean, I tend to believe that a majority of Americans are not for Trump. You know, we had 81 million votes against him last time. I'd like to believe that will still remain the case, will defeat him. I think they know that they've got a cap, too. So for them, that the cost of being mocked by their critics is less because it's baked in with their sense of they just need to mobilize a certain number of people who they've identified. And however he's going to continue to say whatever he's going to say is somehow going to try to mobilize that base. And that's all who they're talking to. And there's less persuasion for him. Whereas for Kamala Harris, my response to Michelle and some of that is that having gone through Michigan and Wisconsin, I think that the people are open to her. Even in union halls, they were not sold fully. And they're open to her. So the case for her is stronger. And that's why I don't want to see us lose on just talking to some of these folks. I feel like, even you and I have watched her try to distance herself from Biden. There's a way in which you do that successfully, I think. You say, hey, I wish that Joe Biden had gone harder at housing costs. As one of my first things I'm going to do, I'm going to go after this. I wish he had gone stronger on Social Security. I wish he had raised the minimum wage. That's a way in which you distance and do it in a way that appeals to some of these votes that we really need.
It is interesting how much housing has been central on the policy agenda. Although, again, I also at this point remain a little skeptical about how much policy matters. Truly, I would like it to, but I'm just not quite. It's not clear as an empirical matter.
Chris, it may not be policy, but it is a knowledge and understanding of I know your life. I know what you're going through. That does matter.
Michelle.